time, I'm going to go and share my screen. All right, can everybody see my screen? Maybe just one person says yes. Maybe Rich, you could.
Screen is seen.
Thank you, Sergey. Much appreciated. Well, listen, everybody. Well, I just wanted to say first and foremost, thank you very much for joining us. With Jump Analytics, we're pretty excited about this this session and this series. For a lot of you that we've been talking to over the past number of years, we've really been chatting about wanting to bring together and have that core expertise in mining and being able to share best practices and capabilities within the mining industry, what's happening in the mining sector today, from a best practice mining principles perspective, as well as with, what's happening with technology and innovation in mining. So we really felt that, it was an opportunity for us to sort of grab the bull by the horns and bring together this series in this session around, the Center of Excellence for Mining. And the intent of the session is to really focus on areas of the mining and where mining can be improved on from an overall mine process perspective. So like in today's session is our series session number 1, which will be kickstarted and led by Richard Flynn, who I'll introduce to everybody shortly. Obviously the key topic for today is on mine reconciliation. We had about 3 or 4 other topics that had surfaced through conversations with many of our mining clients and some of the experts in the industry. Mine reconciliation sort of fell to the forefront as a really interesting topic that everybody wanted to have a conversation about. So we picked that one to start, but we will be polling everybody to get some ideas on thoughts and other areas of interest that you'd like to see where the mining industry is being disrupted. We have this Industry 4.0 concept and theories going on, and it means a lot of things to a lot of different people. And what we want to do is we want to distill it, break it down, find the experts in the industry who can then come to this group and share those ideas and thoughts under the current, safety and regulatory sort of concerns that we all live with today, which is, COVID and the current situations we can't travel. At one point in time and hope in the future, knocking on wood, that we'll all be able to have these events in person and be able to shake hands and have really in-depth conversations around a table on what's happening in the mining industry and what's happening with technology in the mining industry. So again, just really want to thank you for joining us today. We're really excited about the session today. I think we have some great topics to go over and really excited to get your feedback too. You'll notice that in the agenda here, we have that QA group discussion. I know we have close to 40 people in attendance. It's going to really be tough to really regulate how things go, but I'm going to ask if everybody, just from a housekeeping perspective, is during Richard's presentation, we do have the question room open. You can pose questions in there, which we can then come back to and get those questions posed to Richard, as well as if anybody has an idea or a thought on another best practice or how they're actually doing, mine reconciliation, or ideas and thoughts on what's happening within that particular topic. Within Teams, if you're familiar with using Teams, they do have this option where you can raise your hand. And once we go to the question and group discussion, there won't be any screen sharing. I'm going to go back to the cameras on. So if you want to ask a question, maybe I'll ask if you could put your camera on, raise your hand, and that way then we can see you and we can have that conversation about what your question is. And we'll do our best to make sure we can get to all the questions and be able to answer that in an efficient way. So like the mining industry and most industries in a heavy asset intensive sector, safety moments are extremely important. And I don't want to start this meeting without us starting with the safety moment. I know that everybody here that works in the industry is very used to that. So I was sort of, thinking about, a safety moment that I could share. Obviously, there's lots of things we could talk about COVID and all these things, which I think most people here are really well up to speed on, just based on, the health and safety practices that happen within the mining sector as a whole, as well as at the corporate office. But one of the safety moments that I sort of was thinking about that has impacted myself locally in my neighborhood, and I've been chatting with other people in my neighborhood as I walk the streets and walk my dogs, etc. So what I wanted to highlight was the increase in the volume of traffic in our neighborhoods. And where I've noticed the increase in volume of the traffic is primarily around delivery services to your home or delivery services within your neighborhood. That could be food, that could be Amazon, Purelator, Canada Post delivery services, whatever they happen to be. And what I've noticed that a lot of the delivery services that are driving in our neighborhoods where, we have young children running around going to school or riding their bikes, or we have people walking on the streets because we're told to be outside in a socially distanced manner, walking our dogs or just going for walks as couples and friends, is that I've noticed a lot of the drivers are driving fairly erratic and sometimes often quite quickly in our neighborhoods. So one of the things I've noticed in my driveway in particular is that I have a driveway that backs onto a road. It's a residential street. We have speed controls. We have a park nearby. But I often notice that there's a lot of these trucks speeding through the neighborhoods. And albeit I do go out there and shake my arm at them quite frequently, maybe not the best method of safety, but what I did realize is that when I'm backing out onto the roads is really being able to make sure that you eliminate any of those blind spots. And oftentimes maybe it's better to back into your driveway as opposed to backing out of your driveway. And if you're backing into your driveway, you can minimize the risks moving out into the street as these drivers services come into your neighborhood and deliver their goods. We all rely on these services today, probably more than we ever have before, but it is something to be concerned about, and just to give yourself a little extra protection and be aware of those services that are driving within your neighborhood and making sure that you're driving as well as being observant of the extra traffic that may be in your neighborhood. So that was a safety item that I picked up. Just want to make sure that everybody's being safe as they go about their daily tasks and responsibilities throughout their areas of where they live. So that is the conclusion of the safety moment. With that now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move into some introductions, and I'm just going to start with who from the JUMP team is here and who will be interacting during this session. So most of you or some of you know myself as Michael Matrick. I'm one of the partners and responsible for our overall analytics strategy at JUMP Analytics, and really have a great interest in this area of mining and what's happening within the mining industry in general and with data and analytics. And we're really excited to see what we've seen and working in collaboration with our clients and partners, what's happening in the industry. And again, this is another session where we'll see some of those advances and what it means to the area of mine reconciliation. We also have Jeff Armstrong, who's our Director of Strategic Industries, who's joined us. And for those who know Jeff or do not know Jeff, Jeff is a new addition to our team. He joined us back in October. Jeff formerly was with Newmont, and prior to that with Goldcorp, prior to the acquisition. In Jeff's role, he was responsible for and led a lot of the data analytics and mine innovation strategies across North America for Goldcorp and then subsequently with Newmont. We were very excited to have Jeff join our organization, and he's now bringing all those experience to the forefront and also being able to share this with our clients as we move forward on advanced data analytics within the mining sector. And then also we have Patrick Hickey, who is also one of the partners and co-founders at JUMP Analytics. And Pat operates as our chief operator in charge, keeps everybody on point, is involved in many of our projects, and will be a point of contact, and will also be available during the session for any questions and comments that come up during our event today. So what we've all been waiting for, and Richard, don't scream and yell at me for the picture. I got this picture from you, and I just want to make sure that you are the biggest picture on the screen because you're the man of the hour, so to speak. So I just really wanted to thank Richard for taking the time out of his busy day to be able to meet with us and present to everybody here and share his experiences as a resource geologist within the mining industry. I'll just read this off quickly to introduce Richard. So prior to consulting, Richard was a manager of technical services for Newmont. For all those who know who Newmont is, they acquired Goldcorp a few years back. He was responsible for managing and motivating the diverse technical teams across North and South America, ranging from Quebec, Ontario, and British Columbia to Mexico, Chile, and Argentina. So a very wide geography, lots of very different mining practices and principles across those borders and countries. Richard also oversaw the automation of consolidation of data and presentation of global reconciliation information and data for use in collaborating and calibrating, I should say, not collaborating, but I guess collaborating and calibrating are similar, resource estimates and making informed business planning decisions. So, you know, we're really great to have Richard join us and share his experiences. And without further ado, Richard, I'm going to prompt it over to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing on my side here. And I'm going to turn it over to you. Just give me 1 second here as I turn back to here. Stop sharing. Okay, I'm just going to dismiss that. Richard, I can see you perfectly. Sun's shining on your face. You look great.
Yeah, it's a pretty bright spot that I'm in here in the, believe it or not, I'm in my basement. Anyway, thank you very much, Michael, for the introduction. And let me know when you can see, should see presentation booted up there. Do you see the preview screen or do you see the actual presentation?
I see your presentation, My Reconciliation, Mining Center of Excellence, April 2021.
Great. Well, yeah, again, thanks for the intro. And I would look forward to meeting lots of people that are in attendance today in person, but thanks very much for attending virtually. And thanks very much for the invite to do this. So without any further delay or agenda, let's get going. Just as a cautionary note, there may be some names of various sites in some of my presentation material that I didn't have a chance to get fully removed from there. So if you see that and are alarmed by it, please just sort of don't pay too much attention to it. It's all historic and it's not really relevant. So without any further cautionary statements, let's get going. So mine reconciliation. Here's our agenda for the next, hopefully 20 minutes. I'll try and keep it pretty quick and not, you know, bore you with slides to no end. We'll go through a quick definition. We'll look at spatial versus temporal reconciliation. We'll talk about data measurement points and just give an example of some typical measurement points you'd want to do in a reconciliation workflow. And then get into previous methods of data management that we were using at our former company. And then once that was improved on, what we did to actually take that into a new system and a new workflow. And then beyond that, we've done it twice and, you know, learned from both methods. So we'll talk about two potential ways to implement a new workflow. We'll talk about challenges that apply across the board with implementation or changing any of this type of work. And then also about some unseen benefits of having streamlined workflows. So I put up a few quotes by the late Harry Parker. I'm just going to read them, and hopefully this gives us a good kind of baseline to get going here on reconciliation. And it is a critical process to assess the ability of a mine operation to produce the tonnage, grade, and contained metal that were estimated in the planned ore reserve. It should be an implicit part of the mining process, and targets should be key performance indicators for well-run mines. And in most mines, the most critical factors in poor reconciliation relate to lack of ore body knowledge or the failure of the mine, the failure to mine the defined mine plan. So the key concepts that we want to be able to cover off before we get into measuring points is the difference between spatial and temporal reconciliation. Spatial, you reconcile within a specific area within, for example, a stope or a polygon or a series of stopes or a bench. Maybe it's a geological domain. And what this forms is the baseline data that you're going to use for all your reconciliation moving forward. So you can see I've got an example put up of a design stope in blue with some overbreak in red, dilution in gray, and the green is the actual mined material that was mined as per plan. Temporal reconciliation, that's tracking your performance over time. So it's really just a collection of the spatial data. So you're going to compile that and assemble it and essentially pivot it by month, by quarter, by year, however you want to, in whatever period of time you sort of want to consolidate and analyze your performance over time with respect to reconciliation. And the goal of this is to determine trends. So you don't want to have any kind of persistent bias or persistent deviation from a baseline ratio of 1.0 for all of your reconciliation factors. You really want to strive to get onto a series of ratios that are at or close to 1. And anyway, persistent trends, it really, what it does is it brings you back to revisit your spatial data and understand what's causing the variance and what's giving you that deviation or bias in your temporal reconciliation data. So we'll go through some typical measurement points and what you would want to track as your assembly of reconciliation data in your sort of, your monthly or quarterly or however often you're gathering this data, your process. So I've labeled the measurement points with a M prefix, and I've labeled the reconciliation factors with an F prefix. So M1, the first measuring point, should be your reserves. So that's what you're going to be starting out as a first measuring point is what did you plan to mine for that period of time and what was in your reserve. The second measuring point is your ore control model or your final mine plan design. And that's going to have all of the data that you've gathered in that area, and you're going to have all the information tied together and have your most concise and complete picture of what you think you have in situ before you mine it. So between the measurement point 1 and measurement point 2, you're going to have an increase in data, and that's going to give you, of course, different models, and that's something you should be able to measure as ratio F1 is the difference between your reserve plan and your ore control or your final mine design. Then as you mine, you're acquiring data. So that's M3, that's your dispatch, if you're tracking your material movement in some way, shape, or form. And then you're going to, in M4, acquire a survey, which is typically, a cavity survey for stopes or a digital terrain map, some kind of survey for open pits. You're going to have stockpile interactions, which is M5. So you're going to want to adjust or somehow get a good sort of idea what the difference is for your ins and outs in your stockpile, because you're going to need that to be able to compare back to your plans for M1 and M2. The mine delivered is what you've then, after adjusting for stockpiles, is M6, and then you've get an echo there. If you're not muted, please mute yourself. And then the M8 is what the mill tells you they received. So there's going to be a discrepancy between, typically, between the mine delivered and the mill received. So let's see if this works. Yeah, there we go. So you want to take that mill received, readjust for stockpile interactions to get your reconciled mine production. And this is what you use to create your F2 and F3. F2 is a comparison between your final mine design or your ore control model back to the mine reconciled production. So it's M10 over M2. And then F3 is sort of, it's basically an addition of F1 and F2. So F3 is your reconciled mine production compared to your reserves. So those are the three key ratios that you want to be able to track when you're doing mine reconciliation, and really based on those, you should be able to monitor and highlight any kind of issues or areas of concern that you're having over a period of time. I'm going to take you through now what we were doing in assembling and analyzing that data. So this is, where is it? There we go. A typical workflow, it may be similar to what some other organizations are using. So what sites would do is they'd fill out an Excel template. So at the end of the month, in goes the data for your M1, M2, and M10. And that would be saved as a new Excel file. You would just rename it as the site. You give it wherever you're operating and whatever month this individual Excel file was for. And what would happen is you would attach it to an email, and this is me receiving all of the emails from all the sites, and in they come every month, a different spreadsheet from all the sites. So then my task was to merge these into a master Excel file, which is fine, but it's cumbersome. So in goes the data, and then update all of the charts and all of the F factor charts that we want to be able to track for all the different mines at all the different camps in all the different regions. And yeah, it's a huge amount and a completely underestimated time-consuming job to do this kind of work. So what we did was contact data experts within our organization. And at that time, that was Jeff Armstrong and his team. And we worked together to really look at the workflow and say, okay, what is Excel used for, and where can we sever the use of Excel in this workflow? And basically, we worked it back from everything beyond the site primary data can be completely done in other software or systems that removes all of this manipulation in Excel. The first thing we did was create a database for consolidation of all of the data. The next thing was to build a Power BI dashboard and have that update automatically, which sat on top of the database. So everything that was in and updated in the database was instantly viewable in a standard set of charts. And from that, we could also enter contextual data that related to any trends that were in the information that was entered in the database, and that could be part of the dashboard. And then we could just print that to a presentation if it need be, or to a PDF for a quarterly or yearly or semi-annual report. And however we wanted to pivot that data, it was all available. So this saved me a huge amount of time, and it saved the sites a huge amount of time. And what it did is it allows you to remove all of the manual work in Excel and focus on your primary data. And that is, the stopes, polygons, or the volume mined, the grade, tons, contained metal, and how to add additional data. So you can add which area that was mined from, whether it was mined or whether it was not mined, whether you quote unquote drilled it and killed it, or whether or not it was actually part of your mine production. You can put flags in for that. You can track the mining method. You can track the stand-up time. Anything else you want to track, you can add to this primary data, and it can be tracked in the database. So the next things we did was solicit feedback from management and the sites on using Power BI as the tool for display, and what we did was update and improve. So the key objective is, like I said, what do the results mean, and what can we do to enhance continual improvement, and with the goals of improve short interval control with spatial data. So what we want to be able to see is a quicker turnaround on reconciliation analysis, so that that analysis can be turned around for criticism by engineering and operations on how we can get better short interval control over what we're mining at that period of time. And for long term and in a temporal aspect, we want to be able to take that data and say, well, we're seeing bias, or these things are happening with respect to reconciliation, and that can inform your business plan for the upcoming period, whether it's year, 18 months, whatever it be. It can also influence how you as an organization deploy capital, and what you want to invest in with respect to your different operations. It also help with employee engagement. So what it does is it enables your technical staff, and what it does is it says, okay, you can stop spending all your time just smashing data in Excel. You can actually focus on what your expertise are, and that is how to become a more efficient and more productive mine, and to achieve your reserve plan or improve on all the above. It's removing, like I said, the repetitive tasks, and it also is the right way to move, because what we're seeing now in the industry is a sort of rapid uptake of faster methods like survey. Everything's being done now with drones. The data is being turned around a lot quicker, and to have it tied up in a series of Excel sheets and a log jam, it just doesn't fit. You want to be at the bleeding edge, with a way to quickly and rapidly turn data around. And also the fact that it's in a database, you can supply all kinds of other users with that reconciliation data, without having to do any manipulation. It's all there for consumption. So yeah, like I said in the intro, we took two approaches, one in the first company and the second approach in the second company. And I've labeled them as build now, improve later, and option 2 was boil the ocean. And the first was to build the dashboard, fine tune it, and continually work on it. With the advantages is that management was involved in the sort of criticism and buildup of this, so they kind of had ownership in it. One of the drawbacks was that initially it was viewed as just too basic, and then that theme sticks, and then that part of that kind of becomes part of the narrative. The other option was to take the second option, which I labeled boil the ocean, was to try and assemble all of the available data for all sites everywhere, and compile it into one huge database. And the benefits of that is there is a wow factor that when it's done and finalized, everyone's going to say, wow, that's seriously comprehensive and complex. Congratulations. However, the drawback is it's hugely time consuming, and one person not doing their homework can delay the delivery of the entire project. So those are two different ways to approach it. We're successful at both, and anyway, these are the advantages and maybe drawbacks of the two different ways to do this kind of change. In either method or either way you implement this type of change, there's going to be challenges and imposing some solutions. So there's always a problem with the data, whether it's the previous data is going to be incomplete, or there's perhaps a lack of survey in specific areas, or survey quality. The solution to that is to always make sure that your organization or your mine or whatever your sort of umbrella oversight is from a technical perspective has an exact standard as to what you were expecting of the mine and of your staff to generate for data, how to do it, and which data you're meant to be collecting, and what your structure of the primary data is. It needs to be in a standard that's specific to your organization. And then for other things such as the quality of data, just improve your methods and improve your instruments, and you should be able to improve on that. With respect to the second challenge is always with people, and it's the data assembly can be exhausting, repetitive, and mundane, and there's no arguing that. And a second risk with that is that it's typically low priority work in a lot of the technical groups, and it's done as a final step, and it can be in a lot of cases done by junior staff on site, which involves typically quite a bit of turnover in those departments. So the solutions we found for that is to try and streamline and automate workflows as much as you can to remove this mundane aspect, and have management and technical oversight question and discuss results all the time, because you want the people generating the data and tracking the data to understand and know that this just isn't a pen whip type of activity. It's something that is actually driving performance at the mine. And that, therefore, on management and on technical staff and oversight, it's their responsibility to show, perhaps in cash flows or some kind of modeling, that the improvement of this improved workflows, or the fact that they're actually focusing on improving reconciliation, actually pays off. Unintended consequences of the work that we did. I think some unintended consequences, and I've split this into staying in an Excel-based approach versus moving into a database dashboard approach. For the Excel-based approach, it's time-consuming. The underestimation of time it is to display results is always underestimated. Spreadsheets are always clunky and they're error-prone. And as you build up data over time, over multiple years, they just seem to get cluttered with all kinds of superfluous noise, especially with turnover and handing these files around from staff to staff to staff. They get messy. And that the audience, when you're presenting information from Excel, if you're looking at charting or a pivot table or something like that, the audience always requires prompting on, what am I looking at? What are you showing me? You need to be able to explain every time what it is that they're seeing. Whereas with the database and a dashboard sitting on top of it, there's an infinite size to the data that you can add. The second thing is, and we didn't intend for this to happen, but it did, is that management gets accustomed to looking at the dashboards and they understand what they see, and they don't require any further prompting. And within the first couple of years, you can grab anyone in the hallway, shoestring tackle somebody, and bring them over to the computer and say, what's going on here? And they know exactly what they're looking at. From an auditing perspective, your data is a much more secure environment, and if you're getting audited, that's going to be a huge plus, and seen as a well-organized and well-run department, and equally applicable in M&A type applications, because if someone's interested in your asset, then showing that you're actually tracking this important data in a well-organized fashion is often highly regarded. That's all I've got. So we'll open it up now for questions, comments, suggestions, and thanks very much for your time. Hopefully I didn't go too quick or too long. I'm not sure, but yeah, if there's any questions or anything anyone would like to discuss or clarify, let's do that now.
So as I mentioned earlier, there's two ways you can just unmute yourself and ask Rich a question, or you can go into the chat, show conversation bubble at the top on the right side there, and you can pose a question there as well. So I'll just stop talking and see if anybody has any questions. I think there's lots to digest there, Rich, that they're obviously thinking about and reconciling themselves, which is great. What actually might bring out some more questions too is sort of the next discussion, which is we're now going to get into the discussion, and I'll just wait a few minutes before we do this in case somebody is trying to get off mute or, oh, yeah, sorry, we do have a hand up from Ian Vaughn from Narstar. So Ian, please go ahead. You're just on mute there, Ian.
First Teams fail today. So, Rich, for both of those cases that you showed, did you build the database yourself? Like that, did you have a preordained structure and or is that something that was already in existence that you're leveraging?
No, that was built from scratch by our Jeff and his team, and they, I mean, he had database expertise on his team, and once those were built, you know, you can kind of rinse repeat for other departments and keep that kind of structure for whether it's you doing something for an exploration or for finance or whoever it might be. So yeah, they would borrow and you know, lend on their experience from other departments. But yeah, it was, you know, just built up from base principles. It didn't take long and it wasn't complex to do that. So yeah, that was not it wasn't arduous by any means to get that part done.
Great, thank you.
So Richard, I have a question from Matt Westwood here from Equinox. So I'm just going to ask the question. So there are two questions here. The first one is, what are the key issues that generally need troubleshooting through this process, is the first question. And then what are the very rough time savings a site or corporate might save using an automated approach?
Yeah, I think troubleshooting, I think in this, once it's set up and running, once the data is entered, it gives you an instant opportunity to turn around and solicit feedback from the site. So you have to, it's always, the troubleshooting would be what does the data mean? So that would always be the first thing that would happen from my perspective. Is whenever a site is uploaded their data to the database and it's displayed, would be following up and checking back with them and understanding exactly what's happening and where and why that's causing these deviations in the data and what the data is telling you. So it's really about the biggest, I'm not sure if I'd call it troubleshooting, but the biggest amount of time was always to have the sites be able to articulate and analyze what is causing the variance. And it's always like you want to be able to get as much granularity as you can on where you're what's causing your variance, and then be able to explain that. So that was the biggest part, was to be able to trouble. It's kind of like troubleshooting, but it's very productive work in a sense that you're actually talking to, you know, the technical teams, and you're working with them, and they're going further into their data at the sites to be able to explain variances, and then to be able to articulate that in concise notes that you could put in as that we would track as well as part of the database. So you'll see that when Jeff goes through his demo, some of the contextual data that we would have associated with the numbers. And the sorry, Michael, just remind me of the second part. Oh, it was on the time saving. How much
time saving and benefits.
You know, that it's, if you think about just the amount of time it would take to copy and paste someone else's data into another workbook and then consolidate that, and then, you know, update charts. And because you're going to have the data needs, it goes beyond being two-dimensional in an Excel file, because you want to be able to group specific attributes about the data together. For example, you want to say, I want to just look at my underground operations. I want to just look at my open pits. I want to look at mines from this specific region, or I want to look at this specific region. So there's a lot of additional data that's tied to the primary data that you need to be able to then pivot the data on, where you can lump things together or split things apart. That is excruciatingly time consuming to do in Excel. And that part, being able to have that, the instant the data is entered, be readily available to pivot those things around in a dashboard. I mean, I'm probably, I don't know how much time I would be saving doing that, but it immediately allows you to follow up on the troubleshooting aspect instantly as soon as the data is entered. There's no there's no time spent doing any kind of manipulation. I'm not sure if that, I didn't give you an exact number, but
No, that's
um,
fine.
yeah,
That's yeah.
it's
That
really
makes
just
sense.
it's really just sort of the principle of like you're not using any of your time to do that anymore. It's all about I've got this data in, and now I've got it. It's instantly viewable in this dashboard, and I can, like I said, pivot it around and slice and dice it however I want to look at it, and follow up with, you know, the primary data inputs as to, you know, can we get more information on this? Can we go further? Can we go beyond this to explain these variances?
Excellent. Matt said, thank you for that. Great answer. Is much appreciated. Okay. Any other questions from the audience here? I'm just looking around, seeing if there's anything popping into the chat window or if any raised hands are showing up. Raising hands is an easy one. It's just as simply as going up here and doing something like this. As you can see, how my hand is raised as if I were to have a question, or I can pull that down. Maybe some more questions might come up during the next topic, and really what we're going to start show. Oh, no, we have a question. So who is this who's raised their hand? Is it Jie Chen Zhang? Is that right?
Yeah, go by Jason.
Okay, Jason, sorry. Thank you. Please go ahead and ask your question.
So Richard, I just have a question. So there are quite different data visualization tool in the market, like SSRS and Power BI and Azure Data Studio. So I just wondering, during your project, did you try different tool to see which is the best fit for your project, or why you pick Power BI for that?
Great question. And yeah, there's a lot of sort of Coke and Pepsi type comparatives you can do out there. And that's, you know, a lot of marketing associated with everything that's out there and available. I think that Power BI, from what we landed on, was probably the most customizable, and that it's you're not really hemmed in by a lot of sort of boundaries on what is programmed. And I think that it also helps that it's a Microsoft tool. So once you're kind of familiar with Excel, moving into Power BI is kind of it's a jump, but it's not a huge kind of daunting task. Those are probably the two main drivers on why that kind of dashboarding software was chosen, because yeah, it's a lot less limitations, and it's, you know, my experience, or, you know, I think everybody's experience is using Excel, and then moving on from there seemed like a reasonable step.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Much appreciated for that question. Any other questions from anybody? Give it a few seconds here. Might be a delay as the hand goes up on the virtual screen there. Okay, so we're going to move into the next session here. So now we're going to demonstrate what this can look like in the new world. So as Rich did a great job sort of describing, you know, the processes and the methods that are going involved in, you know, spreadsheet imaginations and that sort of thing. Now we're going to show you what the data looks like when it's actually organized and sorted through the database into a dashboard, and the types of information that you can glean from that. So Jeff, this is your opportunity. I'm going to let you share on your end, and we'll get you to tell us the story. And Rich, I know you'll have points to speak to during this presentation, and we'll let you guys run with it. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Where's my full screen? So I have two dashboards I'm going to show. One is kind of the lower level detailed information, in this case, the stope by stope dashboard, showing your R factors. And the next one will be a more high level look at the portfolio of all your mines, which is basically all the stope information rolled up into one. So what we're looking at here is, like Rich said, it's based off your site primary data. And Ian, I know you had the question of, did we build the database? Yes, we built the database, but it had to come from somewhere. The information came from many different sources. It could have been a quick extract from Deswick that the site put together in their Excel spreadsheet. It took on many life forms. It went into SharePoint eventually, where they would just type it into SharePoint, and we would use that as the data source. But as the sites mature and as the process matures, you could automate the extract from Deswick. And I know Dave's online. Eventually, I'll ping him and ask him a question about Deswick MDM. Does it make it easier for the extraction of this data to automate it even further? So with that said, what we're looking at here is, I'm just going to cut it down to a few months and a few sites. Let's look at just Camp 1 and 2. Looking at the tons mined and the dilution tons. So what was planned for dilution as well as unplanned for dilution is included here in your short term. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. And your as-built ounces. So what did we get out of, I guess it's your M4 or possibly your M10 as well. Your measure factors, and ore loss by zone. So this is not your ore loss percentage overall. It's a percentage of ore loss by zone. So out of all the ore that you lost throughout the mining, what zone was affected the most? Yeah. We can drill down into your F factors, of course, by mine. So camp, let's say it's a site in Argentina versus camp 2, site in Canada, and then your mines, each camp could have multiple mines on site. And we just split it up into your, if you're above 1, let's say, well, you'll see in other tabs here, we flag it as like a dark turquoise. Or if you're under, I wouldn't say underperforming, but your comparison to the R factor plan, which is 1, that means you're definitely on target. It'll be a darker salmon. We have F1 factors, F2 factors, and below we have the metals and the grade associated with those factors, how we got to that performance stat. And then on the right, by zone or by vein, we split it up across all the mines as well to see exactly where those tons are coming from in the short term. So this is kind of the overview of the short interval control page, but we can dive right into stope by stope and look at the F factor or F1 factors in this particular example. What we're looking at is the same year and month we selected on the first page and the same camps. We can add yet another camp if we wish. And it's displaying all these stopes within that date range. I'm going to stick to just camp 1 for now. And that will limit us the amount of stopes we're looking at. So we're in this graph, we're comparing short-term tons to long-term tons. So you can see why potentially your R factor is way above number 1 or way below the standard factor of 1. Within the same stope, we can look at the grades for the short-term and long-term, which you can see indicated by the diamond and the square. And just hovering over it, what you see is a tooltip. And all these images will be the same, but you can picture a library of images showing for that particular stope, showing the block model. So that's very handy when looking at historical performances. Here I will add camp 2 because camp 1 only had January data. Scrolling over, you can see the outliers where you pulled more tonnage than you had planned in long term. We were going to be adding some enhancements to this where you can look at outliers like this, such as what percentage more tonnage did we move than expected, for example. And then it would reduce the amount of stopes that we're looking at on this page. Here we have the trend line. It is a bit sporadic. We don't have any smoothing factors put on it. You'll see that in the next dashboard. but it will include any other caps that you have so that you can see what is your trend overall at your portfolio, or let's say just cap 2. So that's the R factor number 1. F2, we can just click here, and this is comparing your as built and short term. So what you see now is your ore losses in red, and that of course is a negative, what you had planned to mine but didn't, of course. And then your dilution, which includes planned dilution and unplanned dilution. And much like the graph we were looking at, we could see grades for the as-built and the short term. The same filters apply. We can add a new camp or filter down Q1, for example. So I think I went through that quite quickly. You could go back to the overview page. You could look at the entire year, for example. It's quick to update. Just checking my notes here. Any questions about this? Do we want to continue pushing forward and looking at the portfolio view of reconciliation? All right, I will do just that. Let me just get out of full screen mode. So it is a different dashboard altogether. Of course, with Power BI, you can secure it one way or the other through just open it to everybody, lock it down by site, lock it down by just corporate individuals. Sky's the limit with security. So again, the dashboard is being built off of whatever the site primary data is, whether it is Excel or if we push it then to a dashboard or sorry, to a database. Most sites provide different formatting information. Over time, like I mentioned, that can be consolidated or made consistent, much easier to pull into a database following that. So what we're looking at here is the overall summary of, let's say, company A. All their mines across all regions, broken down by mine, and this is particularly the reconciled mine production ounces by mine, and how it's performing against the R factor. In this case, it'd be F3. What we're looking at is Q2 at the top. We could switch to Q3 of 2020, Q4 2020, or most recent Q1. Size of the bubble just represents the amount of ounces pulled in that quarter. The next page shows a little bit more information about the reconciliation factors and how they are affected by either individual mines, individual regions, and I will show you how we can filter that. So right now we're only looking at 2 mines out of Australia. For now, I can select all. And there's the overall performance of the company. So what we're looking at is Q1. So data as of end of Q1. We could do as of end of Q4 if you wish to only look up to the end of last year, for example, if that's what you're reporting on. What we are looking at on the right here is notes for Q4 2020. So as you can see, if I change it to Q3, these notes will change, representing, you know, something you can bring to the meeting if you take a screenshot of this, or just something to talk about. Why did we not hit our 1.0 factor in this quarter? Well, you have over time, over the last 3 months of that quarter, what was going on at each mine. We can filter that down to, let's just say, Australia. And the notes will be shrunk to Australia only, of course. So at the top, we're looking at F1, as Rich mentioned, F2, the reconciled mine production versus the final design, and then the F3, which is reconciled mine production versus the reserve model. So as you can see, it's very sporadic. It's hard to see any trends in this view. So that's good to know exactly where you were on that given month. But if we were to smooth it out a little bit, we can look at rolling 3-month average, which will bring everything a little bit closer and maybe back on screen. 6-month will even flatten it a little bit more. And then of course a rolling 12-month average, we can see trends, how we're doing. Are we trending up? And the city landscape that you see in the back, the skyscrapers, those are the tons. I'm not sure how it shows up on the shared screen, but you can see little gray bars. Those are the tons that just represent tonnage hauled out in those given months. These diamonds at the bottom, not configured at the moment, but they represent when there are comments for that quarter. So our filters are going to keep as we move through pages. So I'll just make sure I have everything selected, all active actually. So what we're looking at here is the previous month's reconciliation factors, the values, as I mentioned before. If they're greater than 1, you'll get a darker shade of turquoise. Below 1, you're going to have a light to dark shade of salmon. And that just represents how far off you were on your planning versus your actuals. And the numbers that correspond to what make up the RF, RF2, and RF3 factors. So of course, we're only looking at the last month, and I'll just show you how we can just roll it up to type of pit, or sorry, type of mine, whether it's open pit or underground, get a consolidated view of that performance. And this is, of course, just the last month. Or we can drill into, let's go this way, region. How are we doing for region? Who's performing, who is not performing to compliance. And then the next level down to the mine level. One more level we'll see as a whole every given month. One more level. And of course, we're only looking at the previous month, but that can be adjusted through these slicers at the top to look at the last 12 months if needed. It just happens to be the end of Q1 right now, but year to date, next month will include April, of course, so you can look at the last 4 months. Going back to the top here, I just found that view is much easier to look at than seeing everything broken down in multiple totals. But you can, let's look at year to date, or last 12 months. Go down to the mine level, one more up. And let's only select Australia. And there's your underground Australian mines, the reconciliation factors, etc. Totals at the bottom. Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. These are not buttons, these are just headers. The next tab we have is the raw data. And as you know, everybody loves to extract the data and play around with it, whether it's in Excel or maybe even Power BI on their own laptop. They just need a source. And this gives the ability to look at the data in the raw format, but also extract to Excel. Just a quick example of that. Pretty quick to extract, and there you go. You can slice and dice how you wish. Bring it into your own dashboard if you like. And of course, it shows data up to the end of Q4. So I believe it goes back 24 months. Yeah, that can be configured to virtually anything. And I believe the last tab we have here, intended for screenshots. If you want to include it in a presentation and a slide deck, you can focus on one mine. Let's focus on 2. And as I mentioned before, without any smoothing applied, it looks kind of sporadic. So you can definitely smooth it to your liking so that it will fit on the screen. Trending makes a little bit more sense. Take a screenshot of that. The numbers at the bottom represent the factors that you're seeing in the line charts. F1, F2 is available for your screenshotting as well. Perhaps you're just responsible for one mine N. Then that gives the ability to look specifically at mine N, screenshot, paste into your presentation. Smooth it out a bit more, and there you go. So that's the demonstration of the two dashboards. I know it's supposed to be 15 or 20 minutes on each. Happy to just answer questions now about either or we can go back and drill through a little bit more if anyone has any more questions. That was the last tab. Any questions?
Before we get to questions, Jeff, might need to mute yourself. There we go. Just a comment. When we were using these dashboards for site-based meetings and for any larger group meetings, I wanted to point out that we didn't copy those or screenshot them out to PowerPoints, and I would run the meetings using the dashboard. The only time that I would do any sort of capture of this was to if we were making a report or something else, which also can be facilitated from the print to PDF function, I think, within the software as well. So yeah, just a note on top of that, yeah, when we were doing these regional or quarterly meetings, yeah, everything was run using the dashboard, and it was all live, run from the website.
So Jeff, I'm not sure. Thank you, Rich, for that. Jeff, just a question. I'm not sure if you're able to see Tim Schwartz's question in the chat there.
No.
Okay, I'll read it to you just so you don't have to go off your screen. So there's three questions here. So the first one is, any examples of stockpile reconciliation is the first question. And then there's a second qualifier, I guess, to that, which is, better yet, any example of stockpile balance by claim holder, any example of reconciliation by mine lens?
Well, I can answer that. No. So in that case, M10 does include the stockpile reconciliation. We could be discussing, or we could have this particular dashboard using, let's say, M3 or M6 mill feed, for example. Rich, I know there was some issues or some difficulties with stockpile reconciliation when it was based on multiple mines dumping on the same stockpile. Hopefully you could talk about that, but unfortunately no examples in this dashboard of those stockpile reconciliations.
Yeah, but just to follow up, I mean, that's primary data. So your stockpile ins and outs, they were definitely, when we did this in the second go around with the Newmont operations, because it was such a big component, yeah, that the ins and outs were tracked, and monthly stockpile performance was part of the measurements that were acquired. And I mean, what you would want to do to enhance this type of dashboard is, once that data is in as part of your primary data, you can have a supplementary tab in your dashboard that illustrates stockpile additions and depletions for a particular month, and then you can smooth it or show rolling averages on that, and tie that into how it affects or it doesn't affect, depending on how good you are at stockpiling, your F factor charts that Jeff was displaying.
And then there was, how about the other parts of the question? There was the, better yet, any examples of stockpile balance by claim holder. And then the other one was, any example of reconciliation by mine lens?
Yeah, I think that by mine lens, do you mean by specific geologic domain? Because that would be in the first dashboard that we were looking at with the individual stopes. So that can be pivoted out by different geological domains within the mine.
I'm not sure, Tim, if you wanted to maybe qualify your question a little bit more, maybe ask something further. Yes,
Yes.
domains is good. Okay.
So that is the stockpile comment. We can discuss that a little bit later if we have some time to show what's within the playbook, because that is something that we're continuously adding is new features, new plays to our playbook. Stockpile ore blending, for example, is something that we're working on the side, which when it becomes available in the playbook, it's we release it to all our clients, of course, see if it'll suit their needs. So yeah, I'm happy to discuss that. And Michael, maybe we have some more comments about what's coming down the pipeline with regards to ore blending. I know it's maybe a little bit early, but it's a project that's on the go.
Yeah, absolutely. We can talk a little bit maybe when we get to the update on the playbook. There are some more questions. I have one from Zoo from I'm Gold as well. So I'm just going to read this one to you, Jeff and Rich, and let you guys respond to this. It's not in the chat window. It just came through another channel. Zoo is asking if we have HP GPS for the grade control, could we see where it come from the dilution from 3D maps or from reconciliation is the question. And data source of reconciliation is automatic or manual inputs.
Yeah, data source, those are going to be your manual inputs. So, I mean, typically when you've got your outputs from your mining software, where you do your reconciliation, you're going to output that as ASCII data and track that in a site spreadsheet. It's really the consolidation of that data that we sort of took from that point beyond and went into the dashboarding aspect. But the actual all of that primary measurements that you get from the mining software when you do a spatial reconciliation of laying a design three-dimensional shape and have a as-built three-dimensional shape over top of it and reconcile them to get the Boolean differences between those two three-dimensional shapes, you can assign the specific aspects to each one of those, and that primary ASCII data, yeah, that's where we would also want to focus on moving upstream and trying to acquire that data at that source point, which is the ASCII format, rather than even accumulating it in an Excel. So yeah, our experience to date has been to take the consolidated site primary data that's typically in Excel and then bring that into a database. Whereas, yeah, there's always opportunities to push that data acquisition point further upstream right to the primary output from the mining software in ASCII format.
Okay. Zero, I hope that answered your question. If not, you could send.
Yeah. Yes. Thanks.
Okay, great, excellent. And we have another question here. And the name, I'm going to probably mispronounce this. I apologize. If it's Keith.
It's Erikafi.
Erikafi, thank you. I knew. See, need qualifiers all around. Excellent. So your question was any examples of ore mark out versus X pit in relation to feed versus milled data to track net dilution? Or can these be captured with raw data input?
For ore markout, are you meaning your ore polygon? So what you're you're defining as ore.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So
So, and you're wondering about the performance of the mining of those polygons?
yes. So the all markout versus the expert execution of the markout itself, and comparing that with the feed to the mill and what was milled to track net dilution, or can that just be entered into the system like with raw data inputs?
Yeah. So the way that we had done that in the second case with the Newmont data was we were tracking all of those measuring points. So, you have your final design as M2, that's your polygon, and then M3 would be what is dispatch measurements for X pit, and then followed up by your 3D survey, which is your M4, all the way to M6 after stockpile influence to get your delivered to mill. And then we would have a ratio that would consider the difference between the delivered to mill versus the mill received. And in each of those measurement points, you can track the data as far as where are you either losing or gaining metal with respect to execution on mining those specific polygons, because you're going to have a delivered tonnage from your dispatch system, but you're also going to have a surveyed tonnage that's going to show any discrepancies in your as built as far as how much of that ore you actually did move out of the pit for the month. So as long as all of those are tracked and you're gathering that as part of your site primary data generation process, then yeah, any of that can be and should be introduced into the dashboarding, and especially where it's going to have significant impact on these overlying reconciliation factors, F1 and F2.
Awesome, thanks.
Great, thank you. Great question. All right, any other questions from anybody else? No? Just give a few seconds here. Just checking all the various sources. I was getting some questions through some other channels, but no, it looks good. So I think we're good from that standpoint. So what I'm going to do is just go back to the presentation deck. So we sort of have gone through this piece of it here. So again, thank you everybody for your questions. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the event, is we want to keep this session fairly open. We see this as a partnering of peers in the industry where, people can share their experiences. And if you've done something similar to this in your own organization, at your mine site, please feel forward to bring forward those experiences, because we'd love to share that with everybody here, because everybody's here to learn. So it's a really good concept and one we want to continue on with our sharing. So I know we're good. We're ahead of schedule, which is great, because there's nothing better than giving people back time in their day. So we probably only have another sort of 15 minutes left, but we can stick around for other questions. So if people want to stick on and ask some questions to the team, we'll stay on afterwards. So that's an option, and I'll leave that open. So we'll stick around for maybe 10 or 15 minutes afterwards, and if you have questions, you can ask anyone directly. But what we want to do is kind of give everybody an update on where we are with the playbook. And as you saw through, the mine reconciliation dashboards, there's a lot of work that we're doing there, and we continue to do there. And some other areas we're advancing our mining practices. And again, a lot of this comes from our understanding of learning through the years and continuous work with our existing client base. And one thing about mining, which I really like, is there's an openness and willingness to share best practices. And that's what we really want to do as an organization, is we want to share those best practices with our mining clients. Why do you want to reinvent the wheel when you can already start with one that's being built and just figure out how to put it on your car and get rolling? So, we really want to take that concept and help accelerate, your requirements for reporting, as opposed to having to think about, how do I build this from scratch? So And there is one area too. We are breaking some ground, and excuse the pun there, into AI, and we're looking at exploration as an area of exploring this, looking at core sample logs and doing some work around that with some cognitive methods in partnership with Microsoft. Microsoft is being a fantastic partner for us, and I think they're a fantastic partner for the mining industry as a whole, based on what innovation they're bringing to the industry. And there are some great leaders in Canada that are really promoting the mining industry, and one fellow in particular, Scott Urowski, who I believe jumped into this call. I'm not sure if he's still there or not, but there'll be opportunities for you to reach out to him and Microsoft, and we can help connect the dots there for you as well. What we want to do is just take a few minutes just to sort of give you an update on some of the new things we've done within the playbook. Now, a lot of you may be familiar with our framework, which was the concept of really the foundation of allowing all this data to come together. Now we're going to really be focusing on the advances of data visualization. So I'm going to let Jeff kind of walk us through just a couple of comments and a brief overview of the playbook. And then after that, we'll work to conclude the session for today. And then I'll have a few ending comments, which I'll say just before we do that, just to give you some things to think about for our next session. But Jeff, I'm going to quit my share here and let you share from your end to kind of walk us through just an update on the playbook.
Sure, and I'm going to skip a few slides here and just get right to the playbook portion of it. So what we've done with the playbook is kind of had sectioned out different areas or different disciplines of the mining industry so that we could focus or deliver what's suiting your needs today. But make no mistake that there's more plays, I guess, in our playbook that you utilize. Let's say if you were only interested in material movement today, you could have some future use for asset management reports and dashboards. And again, make no mistake that we're not building this on top of Excel. As Michael mentioned, we have our Jump Mine Analytics framework, which is really the accelerator to bring all the data together into a managed data collection for these playbooks to run off of. So I'm just going to skip through some of these examples of what's in our playbook. And what you're looking at now is kind of like the high level key site-wide metrics that are basically viewed on weekly operations meetings. So you have your poured, your recovery grades, etc. These are just examples of what we've done. It's a quick overview. It could be mobilized, so you put it on your phone and take it with you. But it also is intended for your weekly ops meetings. So nothing with extreme detail. You're not looking at daily data, even though you could hover over one of these numbers and see how you're performing each and every day of that month. But the whole purpose of that is, a summary overview. Is it working? Milling and processing, of course, pulling data in from Pi or whatever historian you have. Excel, if you have it, if that's how you're storing your information. But this is another look of a portion or a discipline of the mining operations that we've built and can customize for your playbook, for your game, your mine. And that's another reason why we chose the concept of playbook. It's forever evolving. No two teams are the same. You're going to have different playbooks, different plays within your arsenal. So we make sure that when we are making changes and when we are adding something to, let's say, material movement playbook, we make it available to all of our clients. If it will fit and suit your needs, we'll make it happen. So here's an example of material movement for two different scenarios. Yeah, it's virtually the same data, but the look and feel a little bit different as well. We could use our templated versions, as you see on the left, try and fit that into the data, whether it's coming out of Wenco or MineStar or Dispatch, whatever it may be. Our framework kind of molds it into what our playbook needs to accept. And of course, we customize the front end for your company. Asset management, again, regardless of what tool you use to track, and I'll show you in a few more slides, we even build a tool if you don't have a tool to track asset management. The look and feel, signed off by the site, but it's typically same information, your downtime, your delay codes, etc., built around your time model for availability and utilization. MineOps, included in MineOps is our mine reconciliation dashboard, for example. But here we're looking at drilling, and this particular one is for an open pit. It could be drilling underground, development meters, etc. We take whatever source system you have, throw it through the framework, and using our templates or something custom based on your needs, put it into your playbook. Exploration, of course, never really seems like it's part of the company. They always have their own agenda or definitely their own budget. But we also make sure that we make this data available to, let's say, the key site metrics dashboard, right? So within our framework, this data all lives together, regardless of where it lives outside in their source systems. What EVPs, SVPs are consider exploration data, it can all be surfaced at the same grain to any dashboard, to any C-level, C-suite dashboard. There's just an example of drilling, and we do have finance for exploration as well. And it gets down to the finest grain of detail, which is how many meters per shift, how many meters per hole, how many meters per rig. If that information is available in your source system, in Acquire, in whatever you may have, we pull that information and make sure it rolls up to a consolidated monthly or quarterly level. Of course, many different safety programs out there. It's very typical for us to just customize a safety dashboard that suits the site, whether it's a corporate site or the individual mine site. We'll build to your needs. And of course, not always do we have a target or a threshold for injuries. I don't know where you would store that information. It's not stored in your safety source system, potentially. And I will show you in the next few slides where we can store that with another tool that's part of our playbook. And then, of course, finance. Everybody loves looking at the numbers at the end of the day. And we build this typically from your ERP, whether it's SAP, Pronto. We'll get that data. We'll make sure it lives within the Joint Mine Analytics framework and can be surfaced at any layer, any level of the playbook discipline roadmap, so to speak. So in addition to dashboarding, there's a lot of need, and mine reconciliation is part of it. A lot of need for entering data that gets stored in a governed database somewhere. So this kind of was built to replace Excel, floating Excel spreadsheets, but it can also be used for building a tool. And I'll show you in a few slides where you're missing your asset management or your equipment availability tool to be, you just don't have that source system, or maybe you're just not large enough to spend $300,000, $400,000 on such a source system. So we built something that allows you to enter that data on a daily basis, shift by shift basis, and then it gets conformed into our mine analytics framework architecture. So it's very, very useful. In this case, as I mentioned before, AIFR budget typically is not found in the source system. You can enter that here because there's always comparisons to your budget when talking safety. This is a Microsoft product. It's built from scratch by us, but it is Microsoft product, meaning it integrates just perfectly with Power BI. And I know there was a question, why did you choose Power BI? And my personal preference is it's just over 5 years old, but it's come so far, and every month there's an update. And almost everybody has Microsoft Windows, Microsoft Office, and it integrates natively with those tools. And with that said, because it integrates natively, you get access to your Active Directory group. So providing security over who enters in gold recovered, for example, you assign it based on who already has an account in your company. That user leaves the company, so does their access. And this is just another example of how we can create metrics that maybe don't even exist anywhere in the company at the time. It then gets stored in our framework, which for any other, let's say mine 2 wants gold recovered kilo ounces as an estimate. Well, we already have it because we built it from mine 1. Therefore, everything's very consistent, and you don't have a gold recovered kilo ounces spelled out. So we make sure that there's no redundancy when creating new metrics. And just another indication or example of how it's you can just search for all Johns in your site, in your company, and click the one that you want to give access. So you don't have to assign licenses or create new user accounts for these people if they already exist in your Active Directory. Going back to what I mentioned about creating a tool for tracking equipment availability. If you don't want to spend the hundreds of thousands of dollars to get that tool for one site or for five trucks. We've done this in the past where we built a custom one that suits the needs of a site or an entire company. That data then gets stored in its own database, which conforms to our mine analytics framework. Is very, very friendly in how they join together, basically. And obviously that's done on purpose so that this information being stored can be combined with material movement. And another tool we've built in the past, and this saves a lot of paper because it eliminated paperwork, is the scanning of samples during drilling. You can track the hole, the pattern, the bench. Everything gets tracked on your phone or on a mobile device, and then immediately when internet is available, gets synced up to whether it's a Acquire or another exploration or drilling database for mine planning. And then, as Michael mentioned, we're delving into the AI space, where we're looking at building a cognitive vision app for taking core photos, photos of your core logs. Not only does that accomplish a tool to create these photos and store it, but it also provides an extra layer of assistance in identifying ore zones immediately as soon as the photo is taken. Now, you may have a geologist looking at these photos or at these cores while they're taking the photo themselves, but this will track and store to a database if anything is captured. Continuously learning, of course, off of previous photos and previous core information, but also returning from the lab, from the assay lab, it learns exactly what was in that core and adjusts and learns accordingly. Once again, we will push that information to your mine planning systems, but again, pushing it to the Jump Mine solution so we can combine it in the playbook where needed, and it just becomes part of the data family that we're building. And that's it. That's an example of what's in our playbook. There's more to come, and of course, there is always improvements going on and new plays within.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Bit of an echo there. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that. Okay, so we're moving along here. I'm just going to, let me do this. Sorry. So we saw that, and now we're going to get to closing remarks. So I just wanted to say again, thank you for your participation. I would like you to go away and think about, and we will send a note to everybody who participated on some of the topics that we want to cover in the next session, in the next series. Ones that came up that seemed to be quite popular was asset management, asset tracking. So that's one we're working towards, but there are others as well that we're looking into, stockpile management, blending, that sort of thing. So there are some areas that we'll be interested to get your feedback. I would like to thank Richard. Richard, thank you very much for your time, your commitment, your preparation in pulling your stuff together for presentation to the team here. I believe, and I think everybody was able to get some value from it for sure. And I have recorded the session, so this will be available. I'll make the recording available to everybody who registered here, and you will be able to view it offline and share it with others within your organization who may be interested. And this will be a continuous theme that we want to do and build forward on this front. Don't be afraid to reach out to myself or Jeff or even Richard directly, Patrick. We're here to chat, and also, we're looking for those innovative cycles in mining where we can double down and co-develop and co-build together and bring that material forward. So just wanted to thank everybody again for your participation and your contribution, and we look forward to our next session. We will follow up. I just got a note from somebody mentioning that we'll send a survey out just to get your feedback. This is our first event, so feedback's extremely important. Make sure that you're getting enough value from this and we can improve as we move forward. We're all looking at continuous improvement. So if you can provide your feedback, it won't be a large survey. It'll be very simple and easy to follow and to do that. And what I'll do here is I'll stop sharing on my screen, turn it back to the floor for everybody. For the folks who have been in this event, myself, Pat, Jeff, Rich, if you wouldn't mind sticking around for a few minutes, there might be some folks that might have some questions for us. If we were in a live forum together, we'd all sort of mingle and go to the water cooler or go to a bar and order a drink or something, not as we're working, but if it was off hours. So I think we'll just kind of sort of hang out in the lounge here. And if you have any questions, you want to ask the team some questions, please feel free. If you need to get back at your task at hand, don't let us stop you. Have a great day, have a safe day, and we will look forward to our next event. So thank you again.
Well, thanks for the invite, Michael. This was great. Really appreciated seeing the stuff that you guys have done. It's come a long way and it looks fantastic. So thanks for that demo, Jeff.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Scott. Much appreciated.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm coming through or not, but thanks for myself as well. That was very interesting to see the complete playbook.
Yes, Matt, we can hear you loud and clear. Thank you for that. Much appreciated. Thanks for being here.
Yep. Cheers.
Cheers. Hey,
Hey
Kyle.
guys, thanks a lot, really appreciated seeing everything. Looking forward to working with you guys, so we'll hopefully get this started soon.
Yeah, hopefully. Thanks,
Yeah,
Scott.
thanks, Kyle. We look forward to working with you guys. Pretty excited about it.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks a lot, guys. It was really good and great presentation. Definitely looking forward to seeing future more of these as we move ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, Matthew. Appreciate it. Thanks for joining and give the best to the Denver team there.
I will, and I'm good to see my buddy Arturo there. So it's good to see Mr. Armstrong.
Yeah, good to see you, man.
Bye, guys.
Thanks. See you later, Matt. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Look good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I didn't want to cut in on anybody. I was kind of waiting for a cue and stuff, so maybe next session we can talk about MDM. But yeah, looks great.
Yeah, Dave. Yeah, we could talk about it now. I mean, you're the MDM expert, and I really wanted your opinion on how easy is it to get the data out of there. And I know being in a database is going to be, conformed already, which is great, and that's exactly what we're needing to do for automation of such a process. So
yeah, basically just waiting for permission to upgrade to the 2020 version so I can migrate all the data that I pumped into we'll call it legacy stope data for better category. And the more I get pulled into this upper decline project, there's more and more opportunities that I see where I can add a lot more value to the historical mining methods the rock mechanics aspect of it. There's a whole host of information. And from what I can understand, the 2020 version is a lot easier to use and produce reports. The 2016 version that I have right now is a little cumbersome, but definitely a lot of room for opportunity.
I wonder what the uptake is for those with Deswick who also have the MDM version, because I know it's quite a bit more expensive.
Yeah, licensing is currently the holdback right now, so we'll wait and see what they come up with. But I know that we have a seat of 10 licenses that we currently own, and it's just a matter of migrating it onto the company server now, or the cloud, to see if we can continue using it. I know planning and scheduling was looking at it from a much bigger perspective, which increased the number of licenses. So that's in question right now. But for what I'm doing and what I'm using it for right now is, yeah, I can continue to build on the 2016 version, but I'd rather not. I'd rather do it in the 2020 version where I can populate whatever report that I need. But it's really cool to see the synergies of what you guys were able to populate in your graphs. Right now, I'm able to do the same thing with historical levels, which levels produced historically more tons, more ounces, which zones had the more rock mechanics bursting going on with it. There's just gobs and gobs of information that's going to be utilized to better support projects and future mining.
MDM is just definitely the way to go.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's one step shy of your Google. I call it Google Underground. Hey Google, tell me what went on with this stope in 1947 or 1949, and you'll get the information. It's all there. You just got to build it. You guys want Google Underground?
Yeah, that's there's no reason we can't have that. That's really how we can make more money doing this kind of work. It's crazy that we have all that, you know, very, very, very specific and valuable information just stored in a bunch of spreadsheets here, there, and everywhere. It's a shame. Anyway, it's good to hear that you're, you know, consolidating that, and you know, it's going to be very valuable to evolution. That's for sure, Dave.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think it'll catch on now that the waters have calmed a little bit with the transition from Goldcorp to Newmont to Evolution. We'll find our legs and we'll start growing with it.
Do they use it in Australia?
Yeah, I believe they've adopted it at the Mungari operation, and basically that's basically they just jumped on board with it. So I think they're looking at